guess what I did, right? So I thought it'd be really fun to take all of the posts that are customer success related from LinkedIn. I took about 4,500 of them. I did an extract using a Phantom, right?
Yeah.
And then I did the extract, and then I just thought, I wonder what would happen if I just stuck them all in Perplexity AI and just asked it like, give me the main challenges that CS face, or what's the causation, like what's the main challenge.
Oh,
And it took ages to do it. Like it was fiddly, and I put an inordinate amount of time into it. Like I was kind of like, I wish I hadn't started this. And then anyway, I did it, and the answer, I said, give me like a one line answer, and it took ages, and it came back and it said the number one challenge of CS today is poor go to market strategy. And I was like,
wow.
wow, oh my God, like it went there. Because I thought it might go a little bit later on, but it very poignantly said that everything that was being spoken about in customer success today relates to the fact that something has not been targeted for a specific need that has been recognized by an expert in that field. I was
Wow.
like, that's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was quite surprised it came back with that, but there was so much data, so the data doesn't lie.
As we always say. Yeah. I mean, I I'm not surprised it's in there. I'm maybe a little surprised it's that it came in number one.
Yeah,
Just because I still feel like, one in a half dozen posts I see is still like, you know, um, how to train your CSM teams to do QBRs, or how to train your CSM teams to, build champions, or things like that, and it's very like yeah, five, 1 in 6 seems kind of old school. Then another one or two seems like how to deal with burnout as a CSM.
yeah,
But then I think, yeah, probably the other half of that dozen are all revenue related, at
yeah,
least. And this has been our soapbox for 2-3 years now, I think. Is just saying, like, you know CS is no longer this elevated support function, or the make the customer happy function, or the good vibes feelings function of
yeah,
3-4 years ago, when everything was selling, everything was fine. We moved into this place where, you know, the founders we talk to, the SaaS companies we talk to, they're going, I need CS to, right the ship, or I need CS to drive the GTM engine, not just be the afterthought of it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, things like that.
I wonder how
So
real.
yeah.
I wonder how CSMs really feel about that, because like in the day-to-day action, I don't know if many of them stop and think, oh, big picture, maybe we're going down the wrong road and we should straight, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got the with our friends at CS Connect, I've had a lot of chats recently, doing some of the events and things like that. And the CSMs I talk to, they fall into one of two camps. Either they're hungry to know about it because, they hear the rumblings, they hear it coming, but they're green, right? Like
Yeah,
they more often than not, they have the tools to do it. They just don't have the setup or the
yeah,
clear, kind of internal roadmap of success for how they do it within their
yeah,
company. Or they have just zero clue how to do it. And what's crazy is the whole way up the org is doing it. Their heads of CS don't understand it. The directors, the VPs, and quite honestly, a lot of times, I'm even seeing with that executive level, whether it's a CCO or a CRO, or even if it's, a bit more old school and a chief sales officer, or chief commercial officer, they don't know how to really build this go-to-market system that includes customer success. And that blows my mind. Like,
yeah, yeah,
because it is the engine of post sales. They all understand, they all look at the data, they all look at everything, that, comes from Pavilion and Winning by Design, and they all get it, but they have zero idea how to do it.
yeah,
They get it with sales usually, or they get it with marketing, And so they, that first part of their go-to-market strategy is locked in and it's solid and it's all that, but it stopped working, in the past 6 to 12 months. And they go, oh, I need to figure out this revenue side, not just sales or not just new business.
Yeah.
And they get there and they have no idea how. They just kind of have this idea that CS holds the key. And then they go to CS and they say, what's the key? And CS goes, I have no idea, but we should probably figure it out. It's absolutely amazing to me that's how quickly the tides can turn. Because 2 years ago, we were having these conversations. I was saying, I think CS should start being comped on retention and growth. And I think CS should start, having commercial conversations, or be part of the commercial conversations internally, if not, handling it externally with the customer. And I mean, I swear the pitchforks and torches were out 2 years ago on this from a lot of people. Just don't make CS that. Don't Trojan horse CS into sales. All these things, and it's. Yeah, and now we're all changing tunes because when the funding and the free money dries up, you got to figure out how to do it. And you and I see this every damn day, right?
We see it all the time, and like I'm a little bit now starting to use more and more less metaphors, but more examples of like other businesses in which it's easy to learn from if you're a founder or a CEO or a CCO that are nothing to do with software. Like even the automotive, industry, if you go and buy a car, like the people in the know, there's the experts, there's the engineers, there's just people in the showroom that seem to know a lot about the features of the car. But when I look at like those car showrooms, I just think there's quite a lot to be learned about the simplicity around how that's set up. And I know that the weird thing is, I know that, when you show an interest in a car and you like the model, that sales guy always kind of disappears into that glass back room to talk to a few other guys. And you go, why is he in there for so long? Because I know what the price is. I know I want it, but what's he doing back there? And I'm sure someone can comment and tell us what they're talking about. But what seems to me to be amazing is in the real world, like in the software world, a similar thing happens, but we are quite sold on the value of the car and what it does, and that is then reflected afterwards as well. There seems to be some good cohesion there. But then when we go to buy a new car, and everyone loves to buy a new car and change their cars up, there isn't someone sitting there going, "Oh, you should really keep this car because this is what we're going to do, or go for an upgrade or whatever." And so, and that's probably because you could be subscribing to a car, I guess, but that's probably because this is what makes CS so tough and so pivotal, is because they'll have those insights as someone who drives the vehicle, like who's someone's experienced the vehicle. And surely that's the thing that everybody needs to know to then sell more vehicles or create a new one. So when I look at it that way, I just think it's so simple. But in the software world, I feel like because it is, we're talking about sometimes complicated business problems to solve, that it gets lost. It gets lost somewhere in the detail. And that's where I think when I did that ChatGPT thing, Perplexity, when I did Perplexity, there are other AI platforms. I sort of thought I get why it's come back with this go-to-market thing, because basically it's trying to tell us that you need, if you're going out there to sell something and you are going out there to prove the value of something as a CSM, don't do it alone. You need expertise around you from the industry, from partners, from communities. Like there's so many businesses that I know right now that just seem to be saying this is the best thing for the product. And I always say, how do you know? And they go, well, 10 years ago, I used to work I used to work in finance 10 years ago. I'm like, but it isn't like that now.
Mm-hmm.
Go and speak to your customers, right? Who knows about customers? The CSMs.
Yeah.
I talk to experts. Who knows about the experts? The CSMs. So, yeah, it does blow my mind still that they're not inclusive in that.
No, it's funny. I don't know if I ever told this. My dad was a car salesman most of my life, like 30, 40
Really?
years. So I
Yeah.
know what happens in the back room. And usually they're
Yeah.
figuring out, depending on the dealership and the quality of the people you're working with, they're either figuring out, the best deal for you or how to completely screw you over. And based on the face you have when you walked in,
Really?
how much? Oh yeah. So can we sell them the undercoating that it doesn't need and the extended powertrain that it'll never use, but what's funny is I mean, when I was younger, the desire for a nice car was much higher in my teens and 20s, obviously.
Yeah.
I'd talk to my dad, I'd saved up money, I'd start looking at cars, and I'd be like, oh, what, I'm thinking about this one or that one, and because he insisted he'd be driving to the lot with me. And, oh, you can't buy that car. Oh, that car's crap. Or what about this car? And I'd be like, Dad, I don't want the Honda Civic. I don't want I don't want the sad Japanese four-door sedan. And he's like, yeah, it'll run forever. You'll never have problems. Yeah. And I'll be like, yeah, but and I still remember, he finally said to me, he goes, look, if you wanna lease a car, if you want to lease a BMW, an Audi, a Mercedes, a sexy car, he says, go right ahead. Just don't own it in 2 years. He goes, if you want to own a car, go talk to the mechanic, say, what's your favorite car? Or what
Yeah.
car do you never see in here? And
Exactly.
it is that mentality of like look under the hood, and that's what it's the good CSMs we know, and let's not leave it with CSM, the good product teams we know who do talk to their customers, the companies that really have worked out their support rhythms and know what their customers, what their challenges are, what their issues are, what's causing the most support tickets. And then the CSMs link to those accounts who are saying, hey, why does this ticket keep coming up? And putting that full story in. That's like getting that full, end to end, mechanics check before you
Yeah.
buy or frankly before you sell. And what's funny on the flip side of that car analogy, they're really happy usually to buy your used car because a lot of times your used car might be nicer than that new car on the lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we forget that sometimes, especially certain big tech companies right now. Everyone's splashing AI, everyone's pushing this, and you'll still run into the customers and go, that's great, but the feature I've been asking for 2 years still isn't there, or still doesn't work, or still
Yeah.
does that, and they're like, but AI, and it's like, that's great, but your AI does the same thing as the other 10 AIs I'm being shouted at for, and I only need to pick one, but I still want X, Y, and Z to work for you. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny is sometimes, I'm not saying don't make it flashy, don't sell the new cars, but again, understanding what your customers actually want is the most valuable intel you can have as a founder, CEO,
Definitely.
GDM leader. And most of them are they're either trying to sell new cars because new product, thing. And like, you think of it in this loop and it's like, CEO or executive says, we need to grow. And you can either do that by expanding, to a new territory, hiring a bunch of reps, things like that, or you can invest in product and say, great, we're gonna dump all the LLM, AI modeling we can into our thing, and we're gonna sell that. We're gonna add it to this package, and it'll be a premium feature. And they do all these things. And like you said, I wonder how often, because they heard that's what they should do, or they've been told it's what they need to do to thrive, how often did they actually ask their customers, what AI features would you guys like to see? What AI would
Yeah.
actually make the program work faster? And you can have this entire go-to-market motion built around your new offering, your sexiest AI thing you've ever built, talks to you in a sexy voice when you log in, whatever.
Yeah.
And the customers don't need it and maybe don't even want it. And so how are you going to sell to a new base after you've invested X, million plus in AI features and product
Yeah.
development, and probably at the cost of things that were, standard R&D, keeping the product running smooth, performance, security. Sometimes those things fall, and yet you've got salespeople out there dying in the real world because like no one wants to buy it, and then somewhere there's a CSM who sticks up their hand and says, "I told you so."
Yeah, there always is, and that the funny thing is like that they don't. I'm still hung up on this thing. This was again like going into that data that I threw into the AI. There was a thing about there were a lot of posts around upsells and expansions and stuff. And one of the questions it posed, which was just genius, really, when it's AI, but it came back and it said, how do you know your customers will buy new as opposed to just expanding? I.e., does your customer base or potential customer base, like your market, do they want another thing? Do they need another thing? Or is the thing you've got that good that they're more likely to buy more of it? And there's this, I don't want to name them in case we get sued, but there's a retro console company. They do these incredible consoles in which you can still buy the retro cartridges to go in it. And each cartridge has like 4 or 5 games. They released a few of these consoles, a handheld one and a one like your Super Nintendo. And you'd go and buy the cartridges, and they're quite rare. But what I found amazing is that they kept releasing hardware. So it was like they were releasing new products. And eventually they just started pissing people off. They have a huge customer base. And people are like, I don't want to buy another console. I want to buy more games. I want to expand my games collection. But you keep releasing more consoles, which is actually the opposite of the common console strategy, which is we launch a console and tons of games. Good opening lineup, and it does reflect back on this go-to-market thing of actually your market out there. Are they the sort of market that wants and needs new things? And what are they? And do they serve a purpose in which people can back it? Like experts can back, yes, there is a need for that, just like you'd get an investor. And, or is it a market that just expands? There are certain clients that I've spoken to in the past who have actually said, we like to have a sponsor, an investor of the expansion product set. So in other words, if they get new products, they don't say, we're just going to launch a new product. They say, well, no, we're going to put money on the line here. We're going to put your job on the line if you think that's the thing to do. But if you don't, then we'll go after expansion. But I think the most interesting thing about all the new products, and especially with AI, is that all of the new stuff that's coming out that uses AI, have you noticed it's all kind of relatively like ChatGPT? Like it's find something and it brings it back.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny. As you know, I was at CXO Summit last week, and we were talking about AI, and it was funny because they presented, the guys from Gainsight Staircase presented, and they did kind of the yellow brick road of AI history, and everything in the past year that's come out is ChatGPT, Copilot, that's the base. Like if anyone tells you we built our own custom LLM, maybe, but you built it on top of GPT-4, or sure, make it cool, give it a fierce name, call it Dragon, whatever, but it's still just ChatGPT with some learning around it and with some things. The next wave we're starting to see now is a little bit more intense, and that's agentic AI. Give me an agent that does X, and so it does the searching for you, or it does the collating or the document right. It starts doing things. It starts doing the tasks for you more than just help me find this or help me write this or help me say this, which is really, really cool. And Atlassian's doing it, Gainsight's doing it. You're starting to see agents come out for Copilot, and that is, I think, going to be interesting because it could either be game changer for some companies, or it's just another thing they're trying to sell. If it's not built into a process, it's just it's a boy, a guy going to the hardware store and saying, "Oh, that's a nice tool. Oh, I bet that would look good on the tool belt."
I have a concern about the value of that, only just because, say my feeling on those new tools, those AI tools that have agents but also deal with repetition, in terms of tasks. I sort of feel like there are certain people who look at that and go, I'm worried about my current job because it's going to get easier, but where does that leave my skill set? Like my skill set's going to get drawn in and, etc. But what I've noticed is there's a really good amount of up and coming SaaS firms who have said, we're not using AI for these repetitive tasks. In fact, we're actually moving away from AI we're focusing on the things that will stay the same with AI. So
Mhm.
not the things that can change, but things that stay the same. And then we're doubling down on that. And that's really interesting because they're getting lots of investment, a lot of notice, because what they're saying is there's AI happening over here, which I think there is a lot of evidence to suggest that it's going to cheapen the SaaS market and the acquisitions. There's going to be some crashes in the market because of
Oh,
AI.
absolutely.
It's coming, and it's coming. I'd say it's a few years away, and I'm pretty surprised that a lot of investment firms at the moment who are just, I know they know it's coming, but I think they feel it's a lot further away than it actually is. I
Yeah.
see it. The data is telling me I'm seeing it going to happen in a couple of years. Those that seem to be doubling down on these are the things you can't do on AI and will always remain the same, and therefore we'll find solutions for that. That's where there seems to be this tiny little side road that these companies are taking, and there's all this money flying that way. And a lot of it is around anything that involves high risk decisions in which, or high risk consequences in which you wouldn't want something that does repetitive tasks against. But like it's funny because from a customer success point of view or customer success manager point of view, you know, that's more customer success over that side, that little pathway. Whereas these are the things that always will be, but let me show you the value of it. Whereas in the AI world, I feel like you've got a bit of a shelf life. Oh, you just type this into ChatGPT and it'll give you the answer. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just too much. I feel like it's this end of the scale with AI is just completely diluted with a ton of people and resource. And then there's this side where it's non-AI, where I think the smart cookies are going, to take a look at it.
No, I mean, I think in my mind, AI is going to fall into one of three camps very quickly. And a lot of companies and a lot of investors and a lot of people are going to be either incredibly successful from it or incredibly destroyed by it. And I think about 1/3 of all AI, I think is going to go straight in the bin because it is all kind of the same. And, the results aren't top tier. And there's only so many things where AI can do a repetitive, simple function well and make life better. There's only so many. A great example is even what was it? It was Build AI or whatever already crashed because it turned out it wasn't AI. It was 700 guys in a center in India doing the building and calling it AI. And trying to get people to sign up for plans, but the AI wasn't actually good enough to get them there. So then they'd review the code that was created, and that's where you still need, kind of this other third, which is the human-centric jobs. And maybe it's even fairer to say 50% quarter, because there's going to be the spot in the middle. It's really not going to change. Like you need people, you need human skills. Something I loved actually, Mark Cuban just said this a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago. Generally a fairly smart guy when it comes to business, so I tend to trust him. He said something along the lines of like the quality of AI in certain areas is getting so good that people are starting to lose trust in what they see or what they hear or what they read because it could be written by GPT, it could be a deep fake video. I mean, for all you guys watching this know, this is actually just me and James dumping some prompts in and getting an AI to pretend to be us for an hour so we can go drink earlier. But the end truth is, we're not far away from video presentations, video subject matter experts. I just saw a thing the other day about there's a band with 300,000 monthly followers on Spotify and they're AI, and they're good. I mean, they're nothing. They're not the Stones, they're not the Beatles, but the songs are it's catchy pop, and it was literally just built by prompts. And so. But what that's going to do is that's going to create this middle ground where people say I need trust, I need and I don't just mean security trust and enterprise trust. I need trust. I need to know I'm having a conversation with a human, not a robot. And things like that. And that's what Cuban says. He goes, actually, he sees in the next couple of years a big push, especially in the selling market. So SaaS technology selling. Of you're going to need to speak to somebody you trust and say, do I need this? Do I want this? Is this right for my company? And that person needs to understand your company. And I just don't think AI is ever going to quite hit that level. And then there's that top tier of AI that is going to change the world and do amazing things. And If you invent that, you are, you're set. But for the rest of SaaS, either as a builder or a user, like realize that, a small section is going to be gold. The rest of it's going to be stuff that you're probably going to end up asking somebody to do. And then that bottom third is going to probably be crap. Now, the flip side of that I argue is it's the difference between, if you're giving your sales, if you're purchasing the tools internally, are you giving your person a hammer when you could be giving them a nail gun? Like, absolutely, the things that automate those tasks and make them better. But there's so many things that people just go, oh, I bought the tool. Well, great, give me a nail gun and see what happens, and I'll say hi to you in A&E. Like, but the flip side of that is, you acquire these tools, you teach people to use them well, and that's where SaaS businesses can save money. And yes, that might actually cost some jobs, because SaaS companies might not need 20 account directors anymore. They might need 5. They might not need, one CSM per 8 to 10 accounts, like, you and I have advocated for years. So kind of that's the golden ratio, because then you can still really build connection. Well, all of a sudden you give that same skilled customer success manager, a handful of the right tools that reduce the amount of time they spend doing the internal stuff, the admin, the work, and they can focus on their customers. Maybe now instead of 8 to 10, they're doing 15 to 20. So then you need a few less CSMs, or maybe you're building really scaled success. I hate the phrase digital CS. It always made me want to zone out, but I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of somebody who has really good customer success skills and can learn how to use some AI capabilities. I think the sky's the limit. I think you can have CSMs now out there like effectively customer success managing hundreds of accounts, because most of what every account needs is probably going to be the same. And if somebody can understand that, and you can break your account segmentation by really a set of needs that group of customer has, rather than just chasing their ARR or something, but you really ICP in within your own customers and say, hey, these customers, they don't need biweekly calls and they don't need a QBR and things like that, but they need X updates on their usage report. They need X responses when things aren't working. They need, and all of a sudden you might have CSMs who can manage hundreds of accounts. And then really there's going to be fewer roles.
And then if they have a really, really good customer portal, it makes such a big difference, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It makes all the difference. Like I would say, if you're listening to this and your customer portal is substandard, wow, if you've got a good customer portal, you will transform your business. And I do not say that lightly, because there's just so much that can be done. I mean, for sales, for upsells, it's unbelievable. It just needs to be done in the right way. People would rather, when it comes to QBRs or reviews, when they go and get their stats or data from a human, it's fine. But the accessibility of going, oh, I bookmarked this, here's our system. Oh, they've got an update here, click, get it. It's just, changes things. And I think AI comes into that a little bit in terms of making that easier to navigate. But, simple things like that just change scale so rapidly, don't they?
Yeah. And I mean, imagine you are that, SaaS software user. You go into a great, end user portal, and it says, hey, James, you're using 3,500 out of your 5,000 licenses. We're seeing these as your top and it's giving you those analytics and those insights. And they actually are ones that mean things, not just here's your MAU and your PEU, but here's how much of what you're using in this. And then all of a sudden, you can say, oh, I wonder why I'm not using that other 1,500 licenses or whatever. I'd like to talk to somebody. And then all of a sudden that brings you into a skilled CSM, skilled solution engineer, skilled somebody who says, oh, well, let's talk about your use cases, or let's talk to you about your business. Because you know what? Most people are going to go one of two ways. If you have that case where you're using 75%, you're either planning to grow and fill it, or you've sat at it for a long time and you're looking to cut it at the next, renewal. And as a SaaS company, if that's your strategy, if you're going, oh yeah, we're okay with our customers sitting at 75% of usage, that's our good benchmark. Good luck. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just find now, it's just more and more competitors in the field that are just winning the game of, and I always use this phrase, choosing simplicity over innovation. They're just biting on the ankles of all these,
other competitors that I've just said, they've just made things too complicated and less accessible for the users and the stakeholders. And I wish, like, if every CSM knows when they have a conversation with a customer, they go through their patter, what they know what they've got to deliver and what they've got to say. They have individual relationships with different customers, but nothing really beats the feeling of being able to say, "You won't believe how simple this is. Here it is," and that goes with anything in life. Like, if something is difficult to achieve but made simple, and when it comes to service and servicing customers at scale, that applies even more. And it's like, I know it sounds obvious, but you can simplify to scale, which is, I think, the thing that is good practice. But a lot of these startup firms, I just love the fact now they're beginning that journey in that way, because they're being so disruptive in the industry. Now, I think there's some like crazy stat, like 90% it's 90%-ish of startups fail because they have a poor go-to-market approach, right? And part of that is actually because the problem they're trying to solve, it doesn't matter if it's already been solved, but it's the way in which they're solving it, and it's the way in which they're servicing it. And I think if you and I, or any of the people we circulate with, or certainly when we went to the artist event, in the CS Connect community, I think if we were to ever see a product, sometimes you see something and you go, "That's so easy." And this is a shameless plug. It's not our product, but Peter Boone's Impact Pilot, great example. But onto HubSpot, I cannot, but he should be drowning in customers because it is just so accessible. When we look at the other CSPs, I see some of the simplifications they're making, but he started building it that way. So I think everybody needs to be on their toes in the next few years around that.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're not, what's that? Talladega Nights, the race car. If you ain't first, you're last.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming. And I mean, I'm glad you brought it up this way too, because I mean, everything we've been building with River in the past year, and now it's refined and boiled down, and we've gotten our asses handed to us by the investors a few times, reviewing and acid testing and saying, nope, you're not specific enough, you're too wide, so we boiled it down, and the whole point, I think, of the CRO Strategy Lab and the SaaS audit is that it's really about helping these companies focus, because you come in, you're a founder, you've got a great idea, you're doing something, and I think where more often than not, they all kind of lose steam around that 5 mil mark, right, or less, 3 to 5, and they can't get past it, or they clear that and then they rock it with a boost, they get an investment, whatever. And then they hit, about 20 and they stall, or, and then they hit 50 and they stall, and then they hit 100. And every single one of those motions is a different go-to-market motion. And it really should be a different business. I mean, what worked for you at 3 to 5 mil doesn't work at 5 to 10 or 10 to 20. Most of the time, there might be pieces, but more often than not, what I find out is as your business grows and as the organism gets more complex, the process needs to be more locked down and simplified. And so, with the strategy lab, we do that by saying, hey, CROs, we come in and we will make sure we understand what matters to you, and we will get your teams, your sales, your marketing, your customer success, and your product aligned to that thing. I love one of the things, can't remember if I saw this recently or if I thought of it and I'm stealing it, but it was basically this idea of like, if you come in and you've got CS ops and sales ops and marketing ops and 4 different op teams fighting at that board level. I am stealing this. It was Sam from Pavilion posted this. Sorry, Sam. But he basically said, he's like, if you got 4 different op teams fighting to show off their data points and their PowerPoint decks to a board or to an executive, every other week, like, you're never moving. So align, and if you're a CRO, you should know exactly what, your marketing ops, CSO, they should all be reporting the same thing, just their piece of it. And frankly, better if they all come to the table together and all your ops teams are saying, hey, James, as CRO, here's what we are tracking, here's how it's going. And then, you can look at the numbers from that op team and go, oh, that's good, that's bad. How do I tweak and improve that? And that's what we're doing with the strategy lab. But then on the flip side of that, with the SaaS health audit, I was joking with somebody, they're like, so it's like a health checkup. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm the guy with the big rubber glove. Like, we're going in there with, with our partner network, with our River partner network, who are experts in a lot of things you and I can't even understand about different parts of business. And we're going, we're going in deep and we're going in uncomfortable, but then we're going to tell you like, hey, your go-to-market strategy is brilliant, but you're not selling because your product sucks, or your product's brilliant, but you're not selling because your go-to-market's terrible, or hey, your internal churn is horrific. People are flying out the doors because, even though, you say you're a family and you have pizza on Fridays and, work from home a day a week, you actually don't, have that connection between like clear paths of leadership, or your people feel like they're watching the leadership raking all the money and they're making pennies.
It's a constant day-to-day refocus on only the things that provide growth, isn't it? Like that's what the funny thing about audits is, like normally it's kind of, I'm just going to uncover all the stuff that's going to make you feel terrible about your setup. But actually what I've loved about what we've built, but also like what other clients have said, is that they've said, what's great about this is I know exactly the things that are causing growth and what the things that we don't have that cause growth. And that's what everybody wants. I think just about everybody wants more pipeline. Literally everybody wants more pipeline.
Oh yeah.
And
I love
can't
too
get it without knowing what you have.
No, and that's what I love about the thing too, because Lisa from our partner network, having her come in and tell you about whether how inclusive your team is, to people who are on the spectrum and who have things like ADHD and ADD, and like it seems like fluff. I get it. Like I talked to an executive and they're like, why do I care if I've got other than DEI initiatives, why do I care? And the answer, and the data we back that up with is, oh, actually, because if you make your team better for that one person, you've made it better for everybody. And here's the performance increase. And now that your team's performing 15, 25% better, that's money in your bank. It's either less cost, more innovation, quicker go to market, better builds, whatever. So what we do with the audit is not meant to say, cut the fat here and there. We're not, I'm sorry, I don't care if this is, we're not fucking McKinsey. We're not here to cost your team their jobs, and we're not here to make your executives look bad if they don't line up with this. We're there to tell you guys how you grow and how it's health. We're not there to tell you cut off your arm so your other arm gets stronger. We're there to say, here's the diet, here's the exercise, here's the prep for the marathon you're trying to run.
Yeah, here's the recipes you need to succeed. Like I did a podcast the other week with Natalie Fraser, and and we were talking about the importance of team, and it's the recruitment businesses and everybody around. I know Luke would certainly sponsor this. It's really poorly supported by the effort to hire and bring people on, the right team to get the right momentum in the right circumstances with the right plan, is so poorly done across so many organizations. And if I was to show anyone the difference between an organization that has nailed that and different in terms of revenue and hockey sticking that ARR, it's phenomenal. And what I've my biggest takeaway from everything certainly we've done, but talking to the guests and so on, is that if you can nail that one piece, if you can understand what you have, and you can nail that piece about team, then you're in such a good place. You can be as agile as you like. You can navigate most storms.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I love you see, and this is something I miss from startup culture, because obviously, we're a bit out from the SaaS startup culture these days, but man, those those days where you had a team of 10 people who wore 10 different hats and, did everything together. Like, those were the days of growth, but I think they were less the days of growth because VCs and PEs were dumping money in it. And I think it's because there was that culture. And then we kind of said, oh, it's got to get bigger. It's got to scale. It's got to do that. I really respect, there's not many of them, but there's a handful of businesses out there that 5-10 years ago built a quaint little startup, didn't go after investor money, or at least not that, or they were very particular. They didn't just chase the biggest bid. And they said, I'm going to build my company to do this or this, but they built it around the people they had, and then they pivot, and they were agile, and they pivot, but the people very much fueled that, and the culture very much fueled that. And now, you see some of these companies, and it's like, oh, we hired so-and-so. Oh, where'd they came from? Oh, they came from Salesforce. Oh, they came from, they came from Oracle, what do they know anymore? That's a dig for anyone who doesn't know James used to work for Oracle. But they come in and they bring in these people who are just there to run it the way another big business went, because the idea is, oh, if it succeeded there, let's put that success into our system. And so much changes with a especially a leadership hire. But as you bring people in, talent and culture are the very lifeblood of so many businesses. And when businesses forget that, when they move to, okay, now we're just going to follow a model, we're just going to steal Microsoft playbook circa 2016, watch out. The revenue is going to flatline, the culture is going to suck, the top talent's going to move, because people are still chasing that startup dream. And it doesn't have to be your 5 to 10 person company. It could be 5,000 people, it could be 50,000 people, but they're still chasing that place where they feel like they have clear career growth, they can move up, they can make a difference, because those are just feeding basic human nature. And when companies forget that, they lose.
If the work's not interesting, they lose. It's kind of always the way, isn't it? Well, listen, man, I think our time's up.
This was great. Thanks for bringing me in on this lovely 35-degree day. Trying not to melt.
It's boiling. I'm in the UK heat, which I think is the worst kind of heat. But you're in Utrecht heat, am I right?
Utrecht Dutch heat can be just as bad, because we're basically a glorified swamp in the Netherlands. We're sitting at sea level, and so it's 35 and pretty much maxed on humidity. For a couple more days. The English just can't cope with any different. Anything that's not rain. Can't cope. Oh, you've seen the Dutch, man. They might be the whitest people in the world. Like the sun, heat. They literally melt like a popsicle on the pavement. Oh, amazing. Good to catch up, mate. I shall catch you soon. Thanks for the chat. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. See you later. Cheers. Bye-bye.